Adriana was characterized from a young age not only by her pretty face, but also by her tenacity, intelligence, and strength of character. When others dreamed of principles, she decided that she did not need a rich prince. She had no need for any mediator between her and money. The girl immediately decided to achieve everything herself, so that she would not be indebted to anyone and would not have to humiliate herself before anyone. Her classmates and school friends twirled a finger at the temple, watching the girl cramming. In order not to get an extra grade good, everything should always be only excellent. "I see the goal, I see no obstacles." Such was Adriana's motto from her youth. It was no surprise that such desperate hard work and determination was rewarded. Everything went as written in the young girl's head, first entering a budget place in a prestigious university in another city, then a good job in a well-known firm, and a brilliant career. Love affairs were insofar as she did not prioritize them in her life, but only supplemented her life with them, bringing variety. Another beau was next to her, only as long as he gave her joy and did not cause unnecessary trouble. If even the slightest discomfort began, the girl immediately broke off such relationships. One would think that she used her feminine charms to generalize men who could bring her some benefits, promote her career, or give expensive gifts. Not at all. The girl preferred weak men whom she could calculate and suppress. She preferred to achieve everything only on her own, so that no one could take away from her deserved laurels and appropriate her next victory. That's why Adriana had a clear division between personal life and entertainment and serious business life, in which she knew no other gods but money and power. To mix these two concepts was unacceptable, unthinkable for her. For almost 30 years of her life, Adriana existed with such principles and was not going to change them for someone else. But, as it usually happens, some external circumstances, dictated by God's will, by fate, by chance, ruins all the previous life with all the principles and attitudes. Adriana's life was no exception. A man appeared in her life by chance, with whom she fell in love immediately and without looking back. For her, the previous choice would have been extremely unusual. Benjamin was characterized by strength of mind and intelligence. He was not to be broken and rebuilt under his heel, as the girl was accustomed to. And another mockery. They met at work. As did not glue and did not live, Adriana not to have office romances with her fate did not bypass her. Worse, Benjamin was Adriana's boss. She worked in his direct subordinate, was dependent on him and his will completely. Fate was cruelly laughing at the girl, at her principles that she had spent so long cultivating, walking and cherishing. Benjamin was invited by the board of directors to become manager of one of the branches of the firm where Adriana labored. By that time, her success in the service, especially considering the young lady's age, was colossal. She was the first deputy manager. And if Adriana immediately, herself desperately unwilling, reached out to the boss, he, on the contrary, immediately disliked her. Benjamin reasonably, as it seemed to him, reasoned that a girl with such appearance achieves career heights solely because of the favor that causes the bosses in various immoral ways. It took several months for his opinion of the girl to begin to change in his mind, and he allowed himself to feel some sympathy. It was only her efficiency, dedication, and feedback from her colleagues that helped the boss overcome his prejudice. He began to look more closely at the young and beautiful employee. Adriana all this time silently suffered from unrequited love. What usually girls go through in early adolescence, she experienced at the age of Balzac women. The feelings covering her with her head kept Adriana's mind at ease. When finally, at a New Year's Eve corporate party, a man approached and made small talk, her heart nearly jumped out. The quiet, calm, thoughtful conversation between two people who were skeptical of each other ended up with the fact that they could not tear themselves away from each other. All night long they talked and talked, finding new topics to discuss and new issues to talk about. Adriana was falling in love more and more every minute, even though it seemed impossible. Benjamin was also amazed that he was still able to experience such a wide range of feelings and emotions for a woman. They were no longer drawn to each other unilaterally, and they could not and would not resist their feelings. Less than 6 months later, the lovers were married. Adriana experienced absolute, all-encompassing happiness, but unfortunately, it was not destined to last long. For almost 4 years, Adriana and Benjamin lived soul to soul. It is hard to believe, But during this time they did not even quarrel, never raised their voices. All around envied the love and understanding between the spouses. One significant nuance overshadowed their existence. Adriana all could not get pregnant, although the couple dreamed that they would have an heir. When a medical examination revealed that Benjamin is not able to have their biological children, for the couple it was a blow. There were long discussions about all sorts of alternatives, all the discussions that had been started, and Adriana's entire life was stopped by Benjamin's death. A heart attack cut short the 42-year-old man's life suddenly and tragically. How Adriana survived it, she herself could not explain. The girl did not even remember the funeral, so everything after the news lost for her existence and any meaning. Since there were no close people in Adriana's life besides her colleagues and husband, it was her comrades who had to save her. Strangely enough, everything was solved by one question, which was asked by her friend from work, who came to visit as a patronage. "Adriana, do you think Benjamin would like to see you like this?" "He would. He'd want you to suffer and kill yourself like that." The girl didn't really mean it when she said it, but she wasn't ready for it to work. It was an emotional outburst, full of despair born of helplessness. But it was what gave the first impetus to the changes in the widow's mind. Everything happened like in a fairy tale. The cocoon that the woman had been carrying for months did not fall away at the same second. But these words of a stranger, in fact, changed Adriana's thinking. At some point, she decided that passively killing herself was tantamount to betraying Benjamin and their love, because he would do anything, sacrifice himself, but would want Adriana to live and be happy. She loved him so much that she could not disobey him even now, after his death. Now Adriana was determined to move on with her life, however difficult it was for her to do so. Entirely and completely the woman devoted herself to work, put all of herself into it. She, enduring her marriage, did not stop in her goals. Adriana, and in general, there was a need for self-realization. After the death of her husband, her zeal increased manifold. Although in money Adriana did not need money at all, she had become a very well-to-do lady. Her late husband earned well, but also inherited from his parents had a solid capital. Now the entire state went into sole possession of Adriana.
Benjamin had no other heirs. The woman by feel was learning to live again, without her favorite man. It was extremely difficult for her. She could not even think of a new relationship. It seemed as if she would never violate or desecrate Benjamin's memory. Some trifling private affair.
At the time, she was sure that other than to defile another, the verbs could not have been chosen. Men seemed petty and unworthy to Adriana now. She couldn't stop comparing them to Benjamin, and he was a giant next to the dwarfs that now met her life's path, as he had been to her before. The harsh reality shattered the woman's hopes of a career fixation and a lonely old age. By then she had resigned herself to the fact that in retirement she would have to look for a nursing home for singles. But 2 years after the death of her first husband, Adriana interrupted her monastic existence to meet a new man. Unlike Benjamin, it was not love at first sight. The man she met was called Ethan. They met at a regular work meeting. He was just a hired manager at a contracting company. Adriana didn't feel anything at first. And her heart did not flutter as it did when she first met Benjamin. However, the signs of attention, beautiful courtship did their job. The heart of the widow began to defend. It cannot be said that the woman gave in to her feelings. Rather, from her side, there was a cold and sober calculation. Being almost a year in therapy with a psychoanalyst, she came repeatedly to the conclusion that it is necessary to have a man around, at least for fun. There were no hopes and aspirations for something serious, much less for a new marriage. Just normal, calm, easy relationships. But to look for them independently was not forces and desire. It was an excuse for herself that someday a man will appear by himself. It is not necessary to do anything for this purposefully and deliberately. Adriana she wanted and got at the same time. Therefore she was in the most passive search, thus hiding her inner fears and panic. When Ethan appeared suddenly in her life, insistent and determined, she simply did not find arguments to refuse him at once. It hadn't seemed serious at the time, not for long. But Ethan wanted something completely different. He wanted a serious relationship, was ready to get married, and according to assurances very much wanted children, was ready for family life and responsibility. That was what broke the woman then in her desperate clutch for her own grief and loneliness. She and Benjamin had wanted children so badly, but fate had decreed otherwise. After his death, she naturally put an end to childbearing as well. Everything died in her with his death, and only after a while it was ready to be reborn again. She could deceive herself and her head, but she could not deceive her feelings and the nature inside her. Her nature was begging for a baby. You can't fool the hormones. Adriana may not have wanted Ethan, but he wanted kids too. He proposed the idea himself. He seemed calm, rational, and very responsible. In fact, she thought he'd make a good father. It was these thoughts that led Adriana to the registry office with Ethan. She gave in. As soon as they became legally married, they immediately began to plan the expansion of the newly created cell of society. The newly married wife, with all the fervor and enthusiasm, approached the issue. The desire to become a mom overwhelmed everything. For her at that point in her life, such frenzied zeal simply could not lead to negative results. Already 11 months after the marriage, Adriana discharged from the maternity hospital with a newborn son. Named him, of course, Benjamin. How could it be otherwise? Life had turned upside down, turned 180 degrees, and was all about the miraculous. A boy's cheeks swelled. At that moment, the woman was happy. It seemed to her sincerely that the son was a blessing from the first spouse. She had no heart for the boarding house and had dissolved into domesticity and motherhood. Her character seemed to allow nothing to be done half-heartedly. She had now abandoned her career and turned her full attention to her family. She was absolutely unconstrained in means, and this seemed a sensible and proper approach. About the same time, Ethan came to his wife with a serious conversation. "Adriana, I am now the main earner in the family and my income is not commensurate with our spending," he began. "Dialogue. Don't worry, we are not needy at all," laughed the woman, not yet realizing where her husband was leading. "I realize that, yes. But it's like I'm an opportunist who can't provide for my family." Ethan said sadly, "I'm taking care of the baby by myself and I'm not interfering with your career. If it's important to you, it's important to realize yourself. I'm all for it. You won't earn as much as we need now." When I thought about it for a long time, I thought I wanted to have my own business, not work for an uncle. Ethan came in from a distance, and Adriana. I didn't realize where he was going with this yet. "I'll support your decision, no problem. But it's going to take a lot of capital to get started." Adriana. Her husband was looking at her intently. "You want to ask me for money to start your own business?" "In general, yes. I wouldn't want to take out a loan. You know that all my major assets are invested for my son's future. I want to take care of and contribute to his future too." "Don't you understand?" Ethan showed insult with all his appearance, knowing how his wife felt about her son and that his future was sacred to her. That's what he was playing at. I have to admit, he thought it through, hit all the right pain points, plus parental feelings. The play was calculated to the smallest nuance. Knowing Adriana like the back of his hand, it was easy for him to lead her to the decision he wanted her to make. Ethan was simply happy when Adriana handed him the first financial tranche he needed for the first time. The man glowed, of course, convincing his wife once again that it was all just to support the family with dignity. And Adriana herself didn't mind. Let her want to, go into another line of work, look for herself. She knew she had cash in her prenuptial accounts for almost any life eventuality. Thanks to Benjamin and his family. And while Ethan was transforming into a prosperous businessman, his spouse was increasingly transforming into an outdated housewife. Her character did not allow her to ask for help and complain, despite having financial opportunities. She morally could not afford to relax and hire a helper for the house or for the child. Her son grew up restless, mobile, and demanded a lot of attention. Due to the busyness of her spouse, she was the only one who could give it. Plus, no one canceled the housework. Everything was on her, because Ethan worked almost around the clock, then problems with government agencies, then checks. In general, he was hardly ever home. Adriana was not bothered by this. She gave all her time, love, and care to her son. She had little interest in her husband. Marriage was the most important thing for her because she had a child. This mode of existence of the spouses lasted for quite a long time. Adriana, of course, did not know what was in her husband's head and soul. But she herself formally performed everything that was required from her side. At some point, her husband's absences began to bother her too much. She couldn't find a better solution and asked a direct question. Watching him, checking his cell phones and personal belongings was humiliating for both herself and him. "Ethan, you're not home all the time. I'm going to ask you straight out, trusting in your integrity. Do you have another woman?" "What other woman?" "I'm constantly working to get this business back on its feet, to bring tangible income to the backwoods. I work so hard for our family." His surprise and his offended mother were so convincing that Adriana unreservedly believed her husband's words. There was not a shadow of doubt about his sincerity. Moreover, she had a high opinion of his moral character and believed that he could not insult her with such a direct and blatant lie. Life went on again, not a bit changed. Adriana alone struggled desperately with the household chores and raising her son, while Ethan was always at work. And so it continued until the day that changed Adriana's life. She received a text message on her phone. She only heard the notification sound, but didn't rush to read it at first. Probably some advertisement again, but then something twitched inside, some inner intuition turned on, and Adriana took the phone in her hands. On the screen was a message from an unknown number with the horrifying text, "Want to know the truth about your husband?" Hurriedly, he went to his office. The first reaction was complete stupor. After a few moments, it already seemed that this is just someone's evil and stupid joke. But after a minute, Adriana decided that it was necessary to be sure. The woman hated uncertainty more than anything. She wasn't prepared to live and wonder if this was a real warning by well-wishers or a joke. 3 minutes later, Adriana, fully dressed, rang the doorbell for her neighbor. It just so happened to be the only person she could trust with her son. The girl was also the girl's mother, almost Benjamin's age, and the neighbors occasionally insured each other and helped each other out. She'd talk to her son as she walked, so he wouldn't suspect anything amiss. "Kitty, Mommy has to leave right away. If you sit there, you're gonna lose." Well, the little guy was only excited at the prospect. Because of his age, he did not notice the changes in the woman's behavior, did not see that his mother is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Neighbor Christina, opening the door, saw from the bell Adriana with burning eyes and at first even frightened. "My God, is that you?" "Hi, something happened?" "Hi, I don't know yet. I need to run away urgently and I'd better leave Benjamin behind. Can you help me out?" "Sure. What are you talking about?" "Benjamin, are you going to play with Clara?" she asked the little one, who had already entered the apartment with pleasure. "But I didn't have time to feed him." "Stop it. I was just about to call Clara myself for lunch." "Thanks, I'll call." "Take your time. If I have to, I can handle it. You know that." It was the first time Christina had seen Adriana in such a state, and she obviously understood that the situation was not ordinary. She minded her own business, but she was ready to help in any way she could. "Benjamin, bye-bye." "I'll be right there." The boy's mom responded. He only smiled back, waved awkwardly, and walked further into the apartment. Adriana literally ran to the car, afraid of being late. Thoughts were shifting unevenly in her head. She had absolutely no idea what to think or what was going on, but she really wanted to know the truth. She rushed to the office quickly. A good thing it was not far from the house at all. As she ran out of the building, Adriana thought of what would happen next and what she would say. She remembered that she had been unusually lucky. Only last night Ethan had complained that his secretary was ill, so she could hear what was going on in her husband's office from the adjoining room. No one to explain herself to, and no one to interrupt. That was just the way it was. Adriana peered into the reception area. No one. The secretary's desk was empty. The woman breathed first so no one would hear her loud, confused breathing, and then tiptoed in, trying to move silently, and closed the door behind her. Listening to the sounds of the woman, the numbness of his heart went to his heels. Her mouth became sharply dry. From the doorway of Ethan's study came a woman's cheerful laughter and her husband's voice. Adriana felt desperately humiliated, but she couldn't stop. She leaned over to the keyhole. The husband was sitting at his desk so that only his waist was visible. He was naked. On his lap sat a young and beautiful girl. She was the one who was chiming with laughter. Her first phrase, which the woman could make out, warmed the unfortunate woman like a shoe on the head. "It's time to send her to the garbage." She's an old woman, 40 years old, and I'm only 25. Am I not a pretty bear? I want to marry you too. It's not that simple, baby, Ethan replied. Adriana had nothing further to listen to. Her husband fell to the lips of his young mistress. Without remembering herself, the woman decided to leave. Little bear. What a ringing vulgarity. That little girl is talking about sending me to the garbage dump. She's going to get married. She's going to marry my husband. Adriana was just furious. Everything inside was like a catalepsy. Despite the range of feelings and emotions that the woman was going through, she was not going to get hot and act on instinct like a mad woman. It was necessary to think and weigh everything and talk carefully. If it came so far that this young nymph wants to get married, the first thing to do is to prepare. And in case of divorce, it is urgent to check her current financial situation. Has Adriana already given her spouse some money for the business? There's nothing to be done. Obviously, this money needed to be said goodbye to. So the first action of the insulted and humiliated wife was the completely non-obvious decision to go to the bank and look at her assets in detail. To do an audit. And the inspection all inside kept rolling with rage. But she kept her emotions at bay. Such a display would be unnecessary now. One must not be allowed to do anything foolish under the influence of swelling emotions. The woman drove. In the car, she was conducting auto training to calm down and not to do something irreparable. Apparently, her husband is not what she naively thought he was. He pressed on the painful, on the desire to become a mother, sneakily taking advantage of the situation. And also asked for a fairly decent amount of money from her personal funds. He must have thought about and calculated various options, while Adriana, like a burdock, hung her ears and believed everything. Now that's coming to an end. But for decisive action, she must first gather all the information. Finally, she parked outside the main office of the bank where all her assets were kept and where she was a premium customer, had a personal manager. Looking at herself in the mirror, the woman was good, but seen like this, there was no way to go. Adriana didn't even have time to sign her name when she ran out of the house, needing to tidy herself up, albeit hastily, put on a little makeup. That did the trick. Monotonous. The familiar routine calmed the lingering nerves a bit. Adriana entered the main entrance, already more calm. She was obligingly led to the meeting room and brought coffee. There she waited for her personal manager, William. The man didn't appear until 15 minutes later, almost ran into the room and immediately started apologizing. Good afternoon, I apologize, Adriana, but you did not warn me of your visit and I could tell he was terribly embarrassed. Hello. Of course, no problem. An urgent matter came up, and I decided not to put it off. The woman even found the strength to smile. I'd be happy to help you. I'd like to see the status of all my accounts, including my investment accounts. No problem. But we need to gather all the information. I'm gonna need a little time. Can you wait about 10 minutes? That's okay. I'll just have my coffee. Thank you. Okay, then I'll be right over and ask for more coffee to be brought to you. Adriana sat, waiting for the manager and figuring out her options. Lately, she had been supporting the family completely. And if she and the baby didn't require a lot of expenses, Ethan paid with his wife's card quite generously. And very much it gnaws at her that there is no option to return the spent money that went to Ethan's business. It will be 100% and twisted as a gift. There's very little chance of that even in court. Okay, let's see what's left. Not much left to wait for. The woman reassured herself. At last, William appeared in the doorway, carrying her many papers. Please, I'll be ready to answer your questions, the bank clerk obligingly emphasized. Adriana began to study the bills and was shocked. Almost immediately, she saw a glaring discrepancy. Wait, here's where it came from. Right here and here, the debits I definitely didn't take out. These are bills for my son's future. So your husband Ethan made transfers to his personal corporate accounts. I beg your pardon? The woman was dripping cold sweat. She couldn't have dreamed up this kind of transfer. He provided a general power of attorney on your behalf. We've attached it. Look, open it at the end. Adriana flipped through the stack of papers in a panic until she saw the characteristic stamped seal and began to read the text. Indeed, it appeared that she had granted her husband the right to manage all her assets, but she had not signed any power of attorney. What's wrong? William asked fearfully, seeing the client's reaction. Everything is wrong. Why didn't you inform me? He's your lawful husband. I'll be sick. The clerk said you were on maternity leave and it was inconvenient. The man was in a panic. Adriana realized the pointlessness of further conversation. Something had to be done and solved. But the bank had nothing to do with it. She started with the essentials in a decisive and commanding tone. So I get it. I need 3 things from you, William. First, I need copies of all these documents. Adriana pointed her finger at the folder. Number 2, if my husband, God forgive me, Ethan, shows up here, don't tell him that I'm aware of any operations that I've been in, and there was something wrong with my reaction. 3, in general, if he comes in and wants to make transactions on my property, you call me immediately. Is that clear? Yes, of course. But what happened? Isn't that your signature right here on the power of attorney? That's just it. William blushed at first, then sharply divided from the overflow of emotion. What am I? What can we do? The man was simply shocked. He immediately imagined the scale of the disaster. For now, you must only do what I say. I haven't thought through the next steps yet. I need to notify the authorities. Maybe call the police. Okay, stop. Any initiative will be penalized. I've had a lot of money taken from me under a fake power of attorney. If you don't want this to be a problem for you and your management, please do as I say. William nodded. Apparently the energy for emotional reactions just wasn't there. He was frightened and shocked at the same time, saying goodbye and once again making sure that nothing would be done without her and that her instructions would be carried out. Adriana walked away. She herself was shocked, terrified, panicked, all at the same time. What to do now is absolutely unclear. Probably need to find a competent lawyer to consult. The woman so bravely commanded the manager, although she herself did not really understand what to do. She was sitting in the car with her hands on the steering wheel, staring off into the distance. Too many vivid shocks. In a few hours, the limit of emotions had been exhausted. In return for them came confusion and absolute incomprehension, what to do next and how to behave with Ethan. The woman broke away from her thoughts only when she heard an intrusive sound. Came out of her head. She saw some woman knocking on the window from the passenger side. Adriana instinctively checked that the doors were locked and only then pressed the button for the glass to roll down. What do you want? Adriana. Hello, we need to talk. You don't know me. That message you got today, I sent it. I'm waiting for you at that cafe. The woman pointed her finger at an establishment at the other end of the square. You will be interested in my information and an offer I guarantee. The stranger hurriedly left, and Adriana tried to figure out if she wanted any more information. But there was nothing to do. She herself was at a dead end, and every new little morsel of new information could help her a lot. So the woman got out of the car and followed the stranger. Adriana entered the establishment and looked around to see where to go. The stranger was already sitting at one of the tables and waved at her. Adriana headed towards her. I'm glad you decided to talk. My name is Betty. What's my name? How do you know? About my husband, too. More than I do, Adriana answered. Have a seat across from me. So I'd like to know something about you. I'm Ethan's ex-lover, she replied calmly. Ethan's spouse was immediately skewered by another blow. I didn't know at the time we met that he was married, so you have nothing to hate me for. I'm just as much a victim of circumstance. And you want to marry him too, like that girl in his office today. All from the villa. The wife. God save me. Forgive me, but your position is very unenviable. The mistress wasn't going to be too subtle either. Adriana would have been happy to say more witty things, but she couldn't find anything to say. It was the absolute truth, bitter as it was, but yes. So what then do you want to help you and avenge yourself? I won't be lurking, Betty replied. To get back at him for not telling you he was married. For not living up to your expectations? For betraying you? I could ask you to elaborate. Well, there's not much to tell. I work in the tax office. I was conducting an audit, and he needed, shall we say, some preferential treatment. Adriana exhaled sharply from what she had heard, and from what she had heard, and from another act of her husband. And it seemed that she knew him well. And after that, she left him at once. Even with sympathy, asked the lawful wife to the mistress. That's right. Judging by the messages and the fact that you tracked me down, he did it for nothing. Yeah, I can't forgive that. I can understand that. You also said you wanted to help me. What did you talk about? Money, of course. I know about Ethan giving you a fake power of attorney to clean out your personal accounts, put it into business and legalize it in such detail. Did you do a good job? There's just one thing I can't figure out. Maybe you can? Why would he do all this? I'd find out sooner or later that money was missing from my accounts. Was I supposed to swallow it? It's obvious to a fool that I'd go to the police. Apparently it was planned that you should not live to see this moment, Betty said calmly. That Adriana shrieked so much that all the visitors and staff turned on them, and that's the only way it makes sense. The money is withdrawn to give it the status of a gift, which of course becomes Ethan's property immediately. If you know him, he'll go straight to jail. It's obvious to a fool. As you rightly point out, this is pure fraud. So you shouldn't have known. Why so complicated? The shocked wife squeezed out of herself. I found out that you have no prenuptial agreement with him, but you have a will, so you're well informed. Now think about its contents and think. Betty nudged and guided the former rival's thought. All my property goes to my son, naturally. But Ethan would be a guardian, under the watchful eye of the guardianship authorities. 1. 2. Why would he need an intermediary? And the scary part is I get it. But who says he needs a son? I'll be fair. I don't know exactly. It's my own personal speculation and conjecture. It's some kind of nightmare. Adriana was silent, and Betty didn't want to say anything else until the previous information was thoroughly understood. So now he's busy making sure that all of my property is his through a gift, so that if I die, I'll have nothing. That's about it. Yeah, I found a bunch of circumstantial evidence to support my theory. They're right here. Betty pulled a bulky folder out of her bag. This is going to sound terribly ungrateful. But why are you doing all this? First of all, revenge. I don't want to and I won't hide it. It's no shame not to forget the wrongs done. Secondly, I feel sorry for you. I'm especially sorry about your boy. Adriana's tears rolled down her eyes. She just didn't understand how it was possible. Her own husband was actually preparing to kill her for money. Isn't that just the plot of a bad movie? It's really what happens in real life. I find it hard to believe everything you said. Yeah, I saw that girl today, heard the conversation, part of the drive to the bank. But look, there's a limit to everything. Also this morning, if I had come to you and told you about the endless cheating, about him stealing money, would you have believed it? I asked Betty a very reasonable question. That's different, you mean? I'm not forcing you to do anything, Adriana. You have to make your own decision. How much time do I have? How long are you willing to wait? Me. As long as you want. When Ethan is going to act, only he knows. One thing I do know is you don't have any more money. You know that. And what exactly do you suggest? File a police report, of course. I've got plenty of people I know. I, for my part, only accelerated some of the processes. Don't forget that it's very important to block all his accounts. Unless the court orders a remand for some reason. Ethan must not be able to withdraw his money and go into the mist. All accounts must be sealed for provisional measures. It's a necessity if you want your money back. Personally, I have more information in this folder on several other felonies. It's all in here. I want to go over it in detail. I can take the file with me. Of course, I brought it for you, but I would strongly advise you not to talk to Ethan. It's all over your face. I wasn't planning to.
We can make an appointment to meet here tomorrow, just in the morning. In the morning would be best. Do I need to go through all the documents and think about what I said? Adriana asked. Okay. Adriana walked out of the cafe in a daze.
There was no plan in her head. Everything had happened so abruptly that she was confused. A blow like that would knock anyone down and turn all thoughts upside down. First things first, Adriana thought that it was necessary to deal with problems as they came. She dialed her neighbor's number. Hello, Christina. It's me again. Excuse me, please. I can leave you Benjamin until tomorrow night. It's very serious and important. I'll cry, stop hurting me. What are you talking about? Sure, let him stay, but he can play with Kira. The girl responded immediately. Thank you. I'm eternally grateful. I owe you one. Put him on the phone for a second. 1 minute. Hello, Adriana, I heard Benjamin's voice. Son, it's Mom. Do you mind having a sleepover? Yay. The boy shouted childishly. All right, I'll see you soon. I don't miss you. Okay, I love you, baby. Bye. Bye, kisses. The son responded. Christina answered the phone again. Did you talk to her? Yes, thank you. Thanks again for helping out so much. Oh, come on. Today it's me, tomorrow it's you. Once my son's staycation was settled, I had to text. The husband needed something to lie about to make it sound believable. Just then, Adriana racked her brain. She couldn't come up with an idea. She desperately didn't want to lie about someone's health to cause unnecessary trouble. There was enough to go around, and nothing else came to mind. What could also make Adriana break away from her seat, leave her son and fly away to an unknown destination at breakneck speed? Thinking some more, Adriana dialed the number of her fellow coworker Kathy. She had been her deputy before her maternity leave and now took her place. She was the closest woman in her circle. Kathy, hi. Did you disturb me? Hi. No, of course not. It's good to hear from you. I have a favor to ask of you. To be honest, I need to get out of the house right away to surprise Ethan with a sleepover. Would you mind telling him I'm at your place? I'll tell him you needed my help with something urgent, that we'll be up all night fiddling with paperwork before the inspection. The woman on the other end of the line laughed. All right, if you have to do it, I'll do it. Thank you. Adriana couldn't think of a better option at that moment anyway. Interfering with her elderly and sick parents was something she absolutely did not want to do. It was finally possible to send Ethan a text with the hastily made-up excuse. She typed the following text: Ethan, Kathy urgently needed help with some paperwork. Will probably take until morning. Don't worry, Benjamin arranged it. She really hoped her spouse would reply with a message too, and she wouldn't have to lie in such a real-time state with no time to think about it. A few minutes later came a reply message from her husband, okay informing. The woman finally exhaled. She now had time to think about it and the advice of a good and reliable man. Michael had just arrived home after a long and hard day when someone rang the doorbell of his apartment. He was extremely surprised to see the wife of his best friend, who had died a long time ago, on his doorstep. Michael, hi. I'm sorry to barge in on you like this, but it's really urgent. Adriana spoke in rapid succession. Hello. Well, if that's the case, please come into the kitchen. I just got here and I'm trying to make myself something for dinner. I'll take care of it, with your permission. The woman said, undressing, and I'll tell you what I came with. Michael was amazed. He had not seen Adriana for a long time, and she had never behaved like this before. He was afraid that something really terrible had happened. Adriana was Benjamin's wife, a widow to be exact. He wasn't just Michael's best friend, he was practically a brother. They were very close, so his widowed wife was no doubt worthy of any help from Michael. Did something happen? Yeah, I'll get to the bottom of it. Here's the file. I'll tell you first, then you can see what you've got here, what to cook with. He showed her all the foodstuffs he had, and silently, expectantly looked at the glowing woman and waited for her to start her story. Adriana concentrated on making dinner and began her story, describing every little detail without leaving out any details. She began with the anonymous message she had received that afternoon about what she had seen in her husband's office, the incident at the bank, and the horror of seeing all the money gone. I told her how I'd met Betty and what she'd told her and what the plan was. We agreed to meet tomorrow morning. I'm taking a break to think it over and consult with you. In a folder on the table were the papers Betty had given me and copies of the ones the bank had given me. Michael sat there without moving. He couldn't believe what the woman had told him. It seemed like nonsense and absurdity. Adriana finally looked at him, distracted from cooking, and, seeing his reaction, added, I wouldn't have believed it myself. So I understand your reaction, but you can study the papers, still in silence. The man obediently opened the folder and plunged into their study. When the hostess had everything ready, she put the plate in front of Michael and froze. Such an expression on the face of a calm and melancholy man she had never seen before. What to do? Everyone here was shocked that it was true. Perhaps he just wasn't an exception. Adriana sat next to him and watched as Michael continued to read his facial expression. It was changing to a more surprised one, though it seemed impossible. Everyone was put off. Eat up. Come on, the food's getting cold. I thought you were crazy. That man couldn't even find the right words. Yeah, that proves it exactly. It turns out Betty was telling the truth. I came here to make sure I wasn't crazy. It's just that it's been hours, and I can't believe my husband did this. And I guess that's not the end of the story. Because in order to complete his plan, to accomplish his goal, he needs me to die. From what I'm seeing, he does. Your Betty is right. He can't do anything without it. If you find out that money has gone out of your accounts, see a power of attorney that you didn't sign, and go to the police with it, they'll just take everything away from him and put him in a cage like a giraffe. That's hardly part of his plan. Adriana couldn't take it anymore and finally gave vent to her feelings and emotions and burst into tears. Michael would have liked to calm her down. But how? What could he say? He silently looked at the woman suffering and did not know how to help her. I wondered, she began. And that's why he married me. It was all a plan and manipulation from the beginning. Only Ethan knows that. Adriana, I can't believe I'm such a fool. What are you going to do about all this now? He decided it was time to bring the poor woman back to reality. If you don't mind, I'd like to check the authenticity of some papers before the meeting to absolutely and surely rule out forgery. You think Betty could do that? If I'd known who was capable of what, I wouldn't be in this lousy situation. Now I'm going to blow on the water indefinitely and reasonably. And then, if convinced, agree to all her terms, of course. Then Betty's help will be invaluable and much needed. I'm sorry I put all this on you. I hope you won't say no to me. You're the only person I can trust right now. It's out of the question. I'll help in any way I can. Just make sure we give you a good one first. Thank you, the man smiled, trying his best to cheer up the unhappy woman. Confused. They were brought in until almost 4. Checked every last comma. There was no evidence of forgery. All the documents provided were genuine. There was no doubt at all. Much to Adriana's dismay, everything seems to be accurate in my opinion. What do you think? You've been dealing with such reports all your life. Michael asked a question. Unfortunately, it's accurate. Yeah, it fits. I don't understand. I'm blind. I've lived with a man for so long. I'm just now getting to know him for real. There's no doubt about the cheating, the fraud. Now these financial crimes and frauds to legalize my money. Adriana, he was good at hiding and concealing his identity, mimicry of the circumstances offered. You just trusted and opened up. You took care of your son and didn't meddle in anything. You got used to living your life the way you did with Benjamin. And not all men are decent. But when you've been away from such an ugly, nasty thing for a long time, you forget that it exists and maybe it's closer than you think. That's it. As best he could, supporting a woman who was on the brink of despair. And there's a limit to that, isn't there? No. How can you? I can't even pronounce kill the woman who bore you a child. Adriana still sincerely did not believe in everything that was happening, that all this had happened and was still happening to her, all over the place. And unfortunately, especially when the price tag is a lot of money, the inheritance Benjamin left you. Yes, but when Ethan asked for money for the business, I gave it. I didn't control it. I didn't transfer it. The appetite comes with the food. The demands keep increasing. He wanted to have all your money, not just a handout. I guess that's how he saw it. I can't get it into my head. I need to get some sleep. What time is your meeting with Betty scheduled? 11. All the more reason. Get some rest. It's been a horrible, hard, long, nightmarish day, but it looks like the next one won't be any better. I didn't ask because you're coming with me to the meetings with her and then to the police. Of course I am. And that was that. They went to their rooms to get some air and sleep, if possible. Adriana thought she would never sleep from the shock and horror. But as soon as her head touched the pillow, the woman instantly passed out. In the morning, she was awakened by the clinking of plates and noise from the kitchen. Apparently, Michael was trying to cook something. In the morning, she came out of the room where she had slept, completely shattered. She glimpsed at the clock. It was almost 10. Hi, she said hello. Didn't you wake me up? Good morning. I wanted to give you a chance to get some rest and trust you with coffee. I decided not to cook. We're heading to the cafe anyway. I don't know if we'll be there or not. I'll go to the bathroom for about 10 minutes. Then I can have a quick coffee and go out so I won't be late. Sure, I'll wait for you. 20 minutes later, they were already out of the apartment to meet Betty. Adriana was setting herself up for what was going to be a very difficult and hard day. But everything must be overcome, if not for her own sake, then at least for her son's sake.
When they walked in, they were already being waited on. Adriana introduced Michael and said that he would be with her if Betty didn't mind. Of course not. Nice to meet you. It's a shame under these circumstances, Betty began the conversation in a friendly manner. Judging by the fact that you didn't come here alone.
Are you ready to take me up on my offer? Naturally, I have no other options. And I am very grateful for your help, Adriana said. It's scary to imagine if it weren't for you. If it hadn't been for your message yesterday, what would have happened to me and what would have happened to Benjamin? And I must apologize to you for not trusting me. After all, you must understand how unexpected it all was. The woman had words prepared on the way to the meeting, but now they're all gone. Stop it. It's my own fault. I realized later that Ethan was married, but I didn't stop the relationship, I let it go. Let's just say that I'm just paying you back, a moral debt. So it's no big deal. It's not nothing. Michael intervened. I want to thank you too. If it wasn't for you, it would have been Adriana. In fact, you actually saved her life. When the words of gratitude, apology, and repentance were finally exhausted, the trio began to discuss more pressing problems. What's our course of action? Step by step, Michael asked. I've spoken to the people I plan to contact. They have convinced me that there is enough material not only to block the accounts, but also to send Ethan to a cell until the verdict is passed, so that he would spend the whole investigation not at liberty and under house arrest, but in a detention center. It would be nice if in addition to economic crimes we had evidence of preparation for crimes against life. But what do we have? I hope that the judge, who will make a decision, will be, and enough of what I have managed to collect and hand over to the hands of the investigation. So we go to the police now, and when Ethan is apprehended, Michael wanted specifics, hopefully by tonight. I was preparing yesterday, I didn't say. I'm sorry you were a stranger to me. I didn't know what to expect from you. They were also insured. Anyway, an investigation into the firm's activities is already underway. That would be great. I promised I'd pick up my son tonight. I wanted to have everything settled by then. Let's go then. What's the time to waste? Wait, let's eat first, the pragmatic Michael said. We won't have time to sit down until tonight. Betty seconded the suggestion and Adriana had no choice. She didn't want to be stressed out, but she had no right to deprive the others of food. As the meal neared the end of Adriana's bag, the phone rang. It was Christina, the neighbor Benjamin was staying with. Yes, Christina, something's wrong. The woman started the conversation excitedly. Hi. I don't know, but I thought I'd warn you. Ethan just came by and took Benjamin. He asked me not to tell you. The neighbor echoed excitedly. But I thought I should definitely let you know. Thank you. He didn't say anything? No, he just said he was taking it. You couldn't give it to him? Asked Christina fearfully. But you didn't say anything? Isn't he the father? No, it's okay. Thank you so much for letting me know, said Adriana and hung up the phone. Two pairs of eyes were looking at her intently, waiting for information. I left Benjamin with the neighbor Christina. She called to say that Ethan had come and taken the boy. He asked me not to be informed. Silence fell over the table. No one knew what to say or what to do. The easiest solution was to call Ethan, and we would dance from his answers. Michael was the first to answer. There is no other option, the woman answered, already dialing her husband's phone number. But she did not have time to make a call. Her phone rang. Her husband dialed it himself. Yes, Ethan, I'm listening. I guess Christina called you already. She just did. Anyway, I know all about your partnership with Betty and your plans to pawn me off. Adriana didn't know what to say to that. She lip-synced to her friends, he knows everything, and put the conversation on speakerphone. And do I know about that too? Hey there, Michael. Ethan said it in a deliberately loud voice. But I have an argument. My lovely wife, Benjamin, is with me. What do you want? Adriana said in a trembling voice. You know very well the guarantees. Guarantees of your own safety, that no scowling, sullen men with handcuffs will come for me. And for that I need money. But the trouble is, it's all your money. So I have it. There was a nervous chuckle. So gentlemen, I'm in the process of cashing in my investments. If anyone comes after me, the boy will never be seen again. That's clear, but clear. Almost unanimously said all three of his invisible interlocutors. Tomorrow evening I will be ready to hand over your son to you. And he's not yours. Don't you care? Are you ready? Adriana couldn't take it anymore and burst into sobs. Honey, you're the one who backed me into a corner. So you're the one who's responsible for all your problems. Don't interrupt me again or I'll hang up. Anyway, I'll be ready to give you Benjamin by tomorrow night. Moreover, we'll have to collect what I did not get to, what is stored in a safe deposit box, and the currency and family jewelry will give me tomorrow in exchange for my son. I don't hear an answer, okay? The wife said obediently. I'll call you tomorrow. Don't you dare to fidget. You've already put me in a hopeless situation with your neat moves. Before you do anything, please think about the fact that I have nothing to lose. You don't have to put me in a corner. You don't have to shut me down. Let me talk to my son. He's with the butterfly. Don't forget, darling. Again, Ethan grinned nastily. You'll be on the social tomorrow, if the three of you behave yourselves. Xiao. The call ended. Ethan hung up. The three looked at each other in horror. A little boy was now at stake. Let's go to my place, Michael said. We need to talk in a private place. The women followed him obediently, silently, seeing in him both his confidence and some hope. When Michael arrived at his place, he asked the young ladies to leave their phones in another room. We don't know how he found out about our plans. In this situation, it's better to be safe, he explained his behavior. When he closed the door behind him, Adriana was almost in a stupor. If she had been terrified before, at least there was a plan. Now she had no idea what she should do at all. And the worst part was that the price of making a mistake was her son. Betty and Michael looked at each other, realizing that they had better come up with something themselves, since Adriana was already in critical condition. What do you think? Betty abruptly switched to the first name, not expecting such familiarity. But there was no need to be polite in this situation. I think, unfortunately, Benjamin. His guarantee is that he won't give it back at the meeting tomorrow. I think so too. Where do you think he got his information? You'd have to ask Adriana. Adriana. Betty asked her to focus. Have you talked to anyone other than Michael? No. I haven't seen anyone else since I saw you yesterday. No, I haven't. Who did you talk to on the phone? But I had to make a deal with Christina. Benjamin, she wanted to cry out loud, but she couldn't afford that luxury in this situation. And Kathy too. Who the hell is Kathy? She's my substitute before maternity leave, a friend from work. And what did you say to her? Michael immediately asked, sensing something wrong, that I needed her help. That I'd tell Ethan I'd gone to her place to help her with her paperwork. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Betty asked Michael. I'm thinking yes. It's the only weak link. I don't think Ethan has the resources for phone tapping and other spy stuff. So I think we should look for the easiest solution to the situation here too. It's Kathy, probably, the woman reflected. It's something to keep in mind. But you can't be 100% sure. The question, the most important one that comes up, is whether to go alone tomorrow or call the police. Adriana suddenly said. She didn't even look up. She still looked at the floor and said 2 pairs of eyes looked at her with surprise. The unhappy mother finally looked at them, looked up. Why, there are more substantial matters to attend to. There's still time to get the valuables. They should definitely have them with them. There is little way he can find out whether you took them or not from the safe deposit box. How late do they work there? Michael asked. Excuse me. I didn't realize he had a general power of attorney. Why didn't he take them himself? Betty asked. It's quite simple, Adriana answered in a monotone voice. He probably wanted to do it just before my sudden demise, so as not to derail his plan. But the circumstances were like this. I didn't check the accounts. I was sure I was protected. I didn't check the safe deposit box specifically, but I did take jewelry out of it from time to time to wear for occasions. so I could have found this missing by accident. To answer your question, it's not until 4 on weekdays or in advance, so that after an hour you have to leave in the direction of the bank. Now I am waiting for an answer to my question. My dears, I know it's not an easy decision. I know what's at stake. That's why I want to know your opinion. My personal opinion. We need professionals. Answered Betty decidedly, most likely. And what do you think? Thinking that my son's life is at stake. And either way, I have to live with that. But I also think that Ethan won't be taking Benjamin to the meeting. He needs insurance. There's no other way out. Otherwise, I'm not going to see my son for sure. Here's what I'm thinking. Betty, do you know anyone who can help us quietly? Yeah, I think I do. Then go and make arrangements if you can. Michael and I are going to the bank. I, if nobody minds, don't want to go there alone, much less come back alone. That was settled. Betty went out a little earlier and caught a car. A few times we switched and changed the route as agreed before. God takes care of him. Adriana and her friend drove to the bank. William ran out to meet them almost immediately. Adriana, hello, we didn't get a chance to talk yesterday. Hello, William. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for this right now. Just please do everything I asked you to do yesterday. Right now I need to get to the vault. I need access to my safe deposit box. The man continued to fuss, concurrently arranging everything he needed to get to his safe deposit box. Adriana simply dumped all the contents into her huge woman's bag, leaving in it only a few letters her first husband had written to her. The memories made her heart clench even more. It seemed that it could not hurt more, but it always turned out to be a hurtful delusion. Why did you leave me, beloved? Mentally addressed the woman to her first husband. Barely holding back the flow of tears, Adriana could barely gather herself to pull herself together and go out to people again. Michael was already visibly nervous and immediately rushed to her. What took you so long? I'm fine. But when he saw the woman's eyes, he faltered. Everything went smoothly there. Yeah, let's go. They drove in the car in complete silence. The woman just needed to think about everything that had fallen on her in 24 hours. Her whole life had shattered into small pieces again almost instantly. The only thing that was at least somewhat comforting and empowering was that not all was lost yet. One must be strong, resilient, and believe in the best while there was still a chance. When the friends walked into the entryway, Betty was already waiting for them in the stairwell. Without saying a word, they entered the apartment so as not to make their conversation known to all the neighbors and random persons. Are you successful? How's it going? It's a deal. I'll let you know the place and time. We'll have help. Then came the worst part for everyone. The inactivity that drove all three of them crazy. They wanted to do something to do, not to be alone with their thoughts and worries. But at the same time, everything came down from their hands in a terrible, nervous state. Betty volunteered to cook dinner. Everyone needed to nourish themselves through not wanting to and not being able to. And at least try to get some sleep. The day tomorrow was going to be horrible, difficult, long and motorized, and it would end unpredictably. Everyone needed strength. At first everyone seemed to agree with him, but they pick at their plates without any enthusiasm. The night went even worse. No one could sleep a wink. 06:00 hours and change. Adriana's cell phone rang. She nearly fell off her chair, daring to go to it. It was Ethan calling, of course. He set a place and time and disconnected, only reminding Adriana and her friends not to do anything stupid. Betty retreated to the next room to make a call from the landline. Fortunately, it was only 2 and the drive wasn't close. The meeting was scheduled out of town, so the time of dumb waiting was coming to an end. No one knew what lay ahead of them or what feelings they would be driving back with. But there was no choice. 40 minutes later, the trio set out for their appointment. They arrived a little early, with no one in sight. Minute to minute. You can't deny punctuality. Ethan's car pulled up. All three of them stared, trying to see if there was a child in the car. When Ethan got out, it was clear that he had come alone. Look, I'm not that stupid. I told you, I want guarantees. Give me what I asked for. When will you give me my son back? Adriana asked through her tears. When? When I'm sure I'm in no danger. He's fine, of course. Give it to me. The wife hesitated to move away from her friends to give the bag to her husband. When the bag was in his hands, something terrible and wild began to happen. From nowhere, as if from under the ground, appeared people in masks and with weapons. Get down. It's the riot police. Adriana didn't realize how she was on the ground. It even seemed to her that she lost consciousness. She came to her senses when she saw Betty and some unknown man she was talking to. Like you've done better. What's going on? The guys are taking a lot of precautions, the strange man said. He said, "Where's my son?" Unfortunately, not yet. And then Adriana looked back at a familiar voice. It was definitely her husband yelling. He was snapping at her. Howled a spew of curses and threats at her spouse and everyone around her. "Give me your phone, please, and show in it a contact of yours, this Kathy." Deputy addressed Betty to her. Adriana obediently complied with what was asked of her. The unfamiliar man who had spoken to Betty began to dial the number in Ethan's phone. Well, good for her. The man chuckled happily. "What is it? What?" Was Adriana nervous? "There's a Sam renting under this number." "So?" "I don't understand." "Kathy's your leak, Ethan. Adriana. Her role is being clarified, of course, but I think it's direct and permanent," Betty replied. "Adriana, don't worry." The stranger spoke again, addressing her personally. "Kathy's place has already been traveled to. Her phone has already been successfully traced. Almost certainly she has your son." All this dialogue, Ethan listened attentively, silent, afraid to miss something. And as soon as he heard the main thing, yelled even louder, even more selective, "Mate," pouring dirt on everyone, not hesitating in expressions. "And this is an additional confirmation of our assumption." The man nodded his head. "Let's go to the department and wait for the results. All of you will be required to testify." The determined stranger got behind the wheel of Adriana's car. She wasn't able to do it herself and drove them to their destination. "When will there be any news about my son?" "As soon as I get the call. Try to calm down." "And who are you?" Adriana finally decided to ask the question that should have been asked in the first place. "Liam is also a friend and classmate of Betty's. And I'm a police officer." Exhaustive. Adriana only nodded awkwardly in response. For some reason it felt awkward. They'd already pulled up to the place. There was still no call from Liam. Adriana was ready to be hysterical when suddenly the phone rang. No one could hear the person on the other end of the line. Betty or Adriana froze, listening carefully to what the man was saying to guess what it was about. "Great. You know the order? First the ambulance is meticulously examined, then straight to us. Liam passed out. What's wrong with my son? What did they do to him? Why the ambulance?" "Adriana, I understand, but be quiet, please. It's standard procedure to make sure she's okay. Let's go. Liam, talk to Michael first. We'll Skype. We'll have coffee. Adriana, we need to calm down. Okay, don't delay. We need to do things quickly here. The baby will be brought in and to break and go with it. There's nothing for the baby to do here." Betty nodded and took Adriana's hand. She turned toward the coffee stand. "Let's go." "I take it he's okay, right?" Adriana asked, not believing her happiness. Yes, everything. Rest faster, we'll calm down, you'll testify sooner and, therefore, you'll go home with your son sooner now." Adriana only now caught the gist of it when Betty repeated what Liam had said. It hadn't gotten through to her at first. Kathy had him. She couldn't believe it. "Like I told you the day before yesterday, you never would have believed yesterday morning that your life would take such a sharp turn. Your husband betrayed you, turned out to be a total stranger. And then there's this friend. You've never even called her a friend. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm ready. Wait, take your time. Drink your coffee and let's go in peace. Liam, the investigators are talking to Michael right now anyway. Isn't Liam an investigator? No, he's an operative. What's the difference? Are you really interested now?" Betty smiled. "I don't know anything right now. I just want to see Benjamin as soon as possible to make sure he's all right." Realizing that he would be brought in soon and not to worry, "Let's go." Time turned out to be, the glass endlessly long. As Adriana chatted with the two men and answered their questions in detail, she wanted to get out. "Maybe I can answer all your questions tomorrow?" she asked, in a pleading tone. "I need to see my son." How can you not understand with him? Their Betty is your friend. Adriana, we all understand the stress you're under and how tired you are. It's all emotion, and please understand that the first interview in our case is very important. It is important what questions we will ask and what information we will have at this stage of the investigation. Note that we are not asking you what Betty or Michael can tell us in full. Anything you say now will make our job easier and may bring the criminals to justice for the maximum amount of time they deserve. The investigator gently, firmly explained to her the situation. Twitching and nervous for her baby, she did not stop, but at least she stopped getting angry at what is useless, wasting time. Adriana spent more than an hour and a half in the office, and when she came out, the first thing she saw was her son, who was hanging around Betty as if nothing had happened. Either mom. Benjamin rushed over to her. "My little son." Adriana hugged him tightly, still unable to believe that he was here, that he was all right. On the one hand, she realized that overly vivid emotions could frighten the boy, but she couldn't hide them at all. Tears just instinctively sprang from her eyes. She couldn't help it. "Why are you crying?" Benjamin frowned. "I really missed you, baby. We haven't seen each other for 2 whole days. Can you imagine? And you've grown up so much. A real man." Mom was jokingly translating her emotions as best she could, so as not to frighten the boy, who didn't seem to understand what had happened or the danger he was in. Adriana exhaled and thanked goodness. It would be wonderful if he never knew what had happened to him and who his biological father was and what he had done and wanted to do to them. "Come on, I'll take you home. You need to get some rest." A smiling Betty came over. "I don't want to rest. I've had a good night's sleep," the little boy replied ingenuously. "Then you'll tell me in detail how you spent these days." "Okay," hugged his mom. The next few days passed for Adriana in absolute happiness, as simple happiness is the absence of grief. The surest way to show a person that they are doing just fine is to take away what they had and then give it back to them. Simple truths that we learn only through our own sad experience. No one can fathom this wisdom speculatively. On the 3rd day, she got a call. Adriana had been summoned by an investigator. She came, expecting nothing good. In general, the conversation did not bode well at first. Some details were clarified and a statement was read out. Betty and Michael asked if she corroborated them. The investigators were about to let Adriana go when she had the nerve to ask the question herself. "Did you find out Kathy's role?" "I might know." "I thought you'd already been briefed. Kathy is the organizer, the mastermind behind everything Ethan has done, from the heinousness of immoral acts to crimes. Apart from the adultery, of course, and our relationship in general, our marriage." "Oh yes, it was all calculated several steps ahead. So many years of patient people. But it had to end for you very soon. I'm sorry to have to tell you this. If it wasn't for Betty, so you're not saying you're lovers, then?" "Yes, they met long before you met him, supposedly by chance. Them, as you must have guessed by now. He even took a job at that firm and came to meet you. It's a very detailed deposition. The couple were playing each other for keeps, so there's a lot of detail. Each wanted to drown the other and make themselves look better, if that's possible given the context. Unbelievable." Adriana was shocked. This was something she hadn't expected. Betty's quote about what she even knew and understood a few days ago came back into her head. "What an idiot I am. How often I hear it here in this office. You don't have to blame yourself. You were unlucky, you stepped, pardon my French, in shit, but it's not your fault." "I believed. Everyone does." The man interrupted her sternly. "Moreover, I advise you not to stop believing in people and people. You, concentrating on the bad, but once you go back, look back, what would have happened to you without Betty and your friend Michael? Think about that, and thank God for the lessons." "It's hard not to agree with you." Adriana came out pancakes from the study and from the new information, from the meanness of people that crossed all limits of good and evil, and of the sermon that the investigator gave her last. It was something to think about. A little over 6 months had passed. It took Adriana a long time to come to her senses after everything that had happened. The only good thing was that Benjamin didn't need psychological help. He didn't have any injuries. It was just an adventure for him. His mother really hoped that it would stay that way for him forever. She was worried at first that her son would ask about Dad and that she would answer his questions, and the endless why points. Thankfully, Benjamin had not noticed Ethan's disappearance from their lives at all. Apparently, he had been home so infrequently before that his father figure had not had time to form for the child. Now Michael came over and played with him much more often. He seemed to have spent more time with the guy in that time, just coming over, than Ethan had in his entire life. Benjamin came to visit Betty. Adriana had a girlfriend for the first time. Despite the ambiguity of their first meeting and Betty's relationship with Ethan, it was all in the past, long ago laundered. But what Betty had done for her in her hour of need was impossible to forget. One day the bell rang unexpectedly in Adriana's apartment. On the doorstep stood a joyful Michael. "Hello. Get ready. Betty is waiting for you at your cafe." "I'll stay on the farm. Did something bad happen?" "Absolutely nothing. Go and have fun." Adriana obediently packed up and headed to the meeting. At the same cafe near the bank, her friend was waiting for her. "Hi," she was happy. Already turning to the waiter, said, "Already you can carry champagne and champagne directly, so good reason at the occasions cannot count. But I'm all in anticipation. To start with the drum roll. Today the court sentenced Ethan. They're moving to juvie for a solid sentence." "Really, that's great. It's weird. My lawyer called me. You know, I sent him in my place. I didn't want to go to trial and see those faces and hear their ridiculous excuses. I asked him to tell me the good news myself. There's more news." "Judging by your satisfied face," Adriana smiled. "What about the civil suit?" "Your civil suit has been fully satisfied. All your money's coming back to you, every penny of it." I didn't doubt it. It was obvious, but the official decision is very satisfying. Benjamin will have a secure future. That's the main thing. From the look in your eyes. And it's not over. Yes, the big news we saved for you this afternoon is Michael proposed to me. Oh, I'm so excited, you guys. Adriana was very upset. Betty, I wish you all the best. I'm glad I didn't overlook such a treasure. Finally, this hardened bachelor will have a ring. Oh, thank you. I hope we get to hang out at your wedding too. Oh, wait. I just got officially divorced. I need a vacation. Okay, I propose a toast. Betty gave us a big smile to put all the bad things from the day behind us. And ahead of us was Michael. And the best happiness we deserved. God willing. Adriana held out her glass to a man and his friend to our future, happiness and success.